All right, and they are going. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this today, Abby. Yeah, I like to start just like pretty basic. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Brooklyn. So I grew up in Brooklyn Park for most of up until I graduated middle school. We lived on the like Brooklyn center side, so closer to the highway, closer to the city. And then we moved to the Champlin side, which is closer to the Champlin Park High School, and it was also being developed at that time, so there was a lot of new homes and so on going in. But I did live in an apartment when I was really little. So, like, we moved into the house around when my brother was born. I remember still having an apartment in Brooklyn Center, I want to say briefly. And, you know, I liked how we had a little cubbyhole in our apartment thing. And also I watched Sesame Street, because everybody my age watched Sesame Street. And, you know, they had this city life thing where you could go walk around outside and do stuff and then come back and live in your little apartment. And I was like, that's cool. I would like to live in the city someday, you know? It seems like there's a lot of people and cool stuff there.
Yeah. Do you remember anything about that apartment besides the hidey hole?
Well, it was just the aspect of it where, you know, if you go into your house, it's just the door and then you're outside. But when you go into an apartment, you have a little secret passageway, and then you go to your house.
Oh, okay.
And it felt safer to me when I was, like, you know, 3 years old. But I knew that my family did not like. Basically, I can sort of track my like understanding of housing by the way my parents sort of explained it to me and the way I got context from other people. So I remember getting to the point where I sort of understood that having an apartment was considered like a poor people thing. And I was just like, that's weird. You know, 'cause I would assume more people have apartments than houses on account of but you know, who knows what the actual statistic on that is. Anyway, and like, I remember liking living in an apartment because I had friends in the building, so I could just go hang out with them and stuff. Like, you know, like, I barely remember this. Like, I remember because my mom told me about it, that kind of thing. But we had, like, some kids living around, and my mom would watch them, and the kid's mom would watch me when need be. They were chill. But, you know, again, I was, like, 3 or 4. You kind of have to be chill with other kids if you're that age.
Yes. Much easier to make friends around then.
What else about like, so the other thing I remember about my like understanding of housing as a young person was when I got explained to me what a mortgage was and what it was all about. I thought it was pretty dumb that you could never really, because I would ask my dad, like, so what's the mortgage all about? He's like, well, it's like kind of like rent, but you pay it to the bank and they've given you a loan or whatever. And I'm like, oh, cool. So wait, does that mean we don't actually own the house? And he was like, no. No. And I was just like, huh? And then, you know, I was like, what happens when you pay the mortgage off? And he's like, well, usually you get a new one to make your house worth more or something. And I was just so, like, gobsmacked by how dumb the idea was, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's like a problem that came up for a lot of reasons that are legitimate, but I still think that the idea of never actually owning your home, and you know, it's so funny because the people I talk to about this who are like centrists or more right wing would always say shit like, well, it's not like you can never pay anything on a house you still have property tax. And I'm like, okay. But, you know, like, my mom would bitch about her property tax being, like, $1,200. And I'm like, well, that means it's $100 a month or whatever. So it's not actually that much. It's just that you're paying it all at once. So it feels like a lot to you. You know? But, like, I don't know. There was this whole thing with my mom. She bought a house with some of the inheritance money that my dad left behind so that my siblings could live in a house when they went to college, but it kind of fractured the relationship in a way. I don't know if I want that to go online, but yeah, because my mom doesn't really seem to get it, you know. To her, it feels like something that's so long ago and far away. Like, my brother got married to a different person than the one he was going to get married to when he was living in the house, and now they have a kid together, and it's like, she probably just feels like it should go away, and it's not how things work. You know, you have to actually work these things out if you want them to be worked out. So anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah. So it sounds like you actually had a lot of experience, or not necessarily experience, but like a lot of things explained to you about housing sort of throughout your childhood.
Well, my dad would always explain to me any questions I asked, and I was always asking lots of questions. I mean, not always, right, because he's still a dad, so sometimes he'd just make up a bullshit answer. But, yeah, I remember us having talks a lot when we would go to the park right by our house. It was within walking distance. That was actually where I went to preschool. So we would go by the place. I went to preschool, and I feel like being able to like be near things like that, it gives you a good sort of understanding of like, this is my neighborhood, this is where I grew up or whatever. And so when it came to the point where I was actually living on my own, and I ended up in a situation where I was just moving every single year because I couldn't. Sometimes because I couldn't afford rent raises, but mostly because of various housing issues surrounding things. So, like, I was living in a house on Englewood, and it was not great, and the place, you know, like, it was one of those situations where there were technically 4 bedrooms, but there were 6 people living there, and most of them weren't sharing bedrooms. So, like, there was one bedroom that was just a completely enclosed space, which I don't feel comfortable with. It's illegal, but...
No windows or anything?
Yeah, there was no windows. They had put an egress window in the other room, but that just made it more obvious that Because if the egress window was going to go in that room, it would have to be in the driveway. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't really work. And so I imagine that the people who owned the house just did not care that much. So ultimately, the person living in that room moved out. We didn't put another person in there. But that house, we all left because we were sort of hating it because the landlords didn't give a shit and we were having trouble filling all the rooms. So we found a different place that was smaller and that was owned by my friend Theo's boss at the time. And we lived there until 2010, at which point it was foreclosed on because of, you know, the housing crisis. Mm. And then after that I had to move home. And then I moved home, and it was not great for me. And then my brother also moved back home, and because of the issues that he'd been having, he didn't want to live there for very long. And so we both moved out on our own together in 2014. But after that happened, he was having a lot of problems. He was later diagnosed with MS, and he was like working nights, and he was going to live with his friend who was also working nights with him.
MS being
multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was having just like vision problems and all these other problems, and he probably, you know, and we didn't hang out very much because I was working freelance from home and he was working nights, so he would be asleep. So we had to separate, and that's when I moved into the house in Roseville, where I was living in one room in a house with like a group of people who were essentially a family. But then I was kicked out because the main couple, the like mom with 2 kids and her boyfriend, broke up, and they were like, "We're gonna have to deal with this shit, so you have to find someplace else to live." And I lived there for 9 months.
Yeah, wow. Sounds like you bounced around a lot.
Ugh. But it's just like, that's the most cost-effective way to do it, essentially, if you're not going to be paying for movers, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's also just like the way that life has been for people who graduated around the time that I did, with the kind of debt that I did, you know? It's like...
Yeah. So to get the timeline a little, so you grew up elementary, middle school in like Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center area. Mm-hmm. Is that where you went to high school too? Or?
Yeah, well, I was probably already going to go to Champlain Park just because of where we lived, but we ended up moving to like right next to it. So like when I was born in 85, so basically the moment that I graduated middle school and went into high school was the year 2000. So okay. It's like, you know, for me, then I graduated college in 2007, which was a bad year to graduate college. I didn't get a job until, like, almost a year later in like, January of 2008.
Yeah, what was going on that made it a bad time to graduate?
Well, the housing crisis happened about a year later. Mm-hmm. So I hadn't been able to find a job right away. You know, for various reasons. And, ever since then, property prices they fluctuate in a different way, but rent prices have been going up ever since then. And so, like, the amount we paid to rent that house on Englewood is the same amount I pay, like, altogether, for all 6 of us or whatever, was roughly the same amount that I pay here. I think we paid $1,200, and I paid like 10 or 1,060 or something here. And so it's like, that sucks, you know, especially since like when I look back at the various places I stayed, it was struggling. I was struggling just to keep it under like $900 a month. And, you know, I got this place after I got a job that paid decently, but it hasn't been easy to keep it since I, like, lost that job. But, so basically, like, I know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As a little kid, I was always nervous. And, you know, I still am. That I'm not, like, functional enough to exist in the world, so I would keep an eye on things like, what's a mortgage, you know? Because eventually I was like, eventually I'll have to figure this out. I was wrong there. So far I haven't had to. But the like, intent of it was sort of to prepare for having, you know, to deal with this stuff in the future. And, like, what's prepared me more than the actual experiences of, like, going and having to get an apartment was just knowing the laws around it. So, like, I moved here partially because I found out that they don't check your credit when you get an apartment. They're not allowed to. So, since I have really awful credit, I've always been just very anxious and very tense about, like, especially since a lot of these places, they want you to pay to apply. And it's like, I'm just throwing good money after bad if they're not going to take me because I have a bad credit, you know? So, but, like, knowing that the credit thing is an issue is because like, the thing that makes me frustrated is when you figure out all of the things, all the various factors that confluenced to create this problem that you're in. And so it's like, credit scores, I don't really believe in them, and I was born before they existed. And so it's like, I shouldn't have to deal with that, but I mean, I don't want kids to deal with it either, so it shouldn't exist. And like, the idea of the house as like an investment vehicle, which has basically been, I think, perverted in a lot of ways. Because, you know, I can understand like a family home as an investment vehicle. That's how it works in Japan in a lot of ways. If there's like a house, because land is so scarce there, it's basically like this either has to be handed down or whatever, you know? That's why most people live in condos in Japan. I mean, when it comes to the city, there's more houses in the... Anyway, whatever. It's like normal, you know, urban-rural divide things. But it's like knowing that if I had just been a little luckier, you know, I could have gotten out of my childhood in a better position to become an adult is frustrating. Especially when you're, like, looking at all of the various traps that you tripped over and seeing who set them and why. And it's just like, oh. So you don't want me to succeed, I get it, you know? But, like, when you think about the idea of mortgages, it's like, that just seems like it's really good for the banks. So it's like, I get a house, but I'm always paying money to the bank. And, you know, like, when I was trying to, like, have my dad explain it to me, I think even he didn't really get it.
Can be the kind of thing that people just kind of accept as normal, and then once you really look at it, it's like, oh, I guess we kind of don't own our house, maybe? I don't know, like...
Yeah, I mean, like, people see ownership as this, like... You know, like, the difference between renting an apartment and owning a place is that you can, like, paint it, and you can knock a wall down if you want to, or whatever. But... fundamentally, those are things I could also do here, except that, you know, I might have to pay for them to paint it back or whatever. And ultimately, isn't that what you're doing? You know, when you sell someone your house, you know, they're gonna give you less of an offer if it's painted some kind of really garish color, which is why everybody paints their houses beige now when they're trying to sell them, and they all look really garbagey. And it's just like... I mean, when you drill down to it, it's all about capitalism and just trying to squeeze every possible cent out of everything. And so it's like, if we can get even $1 more for having a generic color, never mind that you could probably get someone who really liked, you know, like the architecture or whatever to pay a decent amount, but they're not able to really appreciate it because there's no contrast on it. It's just white. Sorry, I went off.
No worries. It's.
I do that sometimes.
Yeah, but yeah. Well, so you were bringing up Japan. And I know, you know, part of your work is translating manga. So I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit about that and how you got into that.
Oh, I mean, it's not really much of a story. I just found a job on Craigslist. This was after I had the first job that I had, which was, it was tough because it's not like I liked it, but I couldn't really, I had no resources to go and find a new one.
What was the job?
It was just billing and invoice entering for a company that sold fluid engineering supplies. So, like, you know, just one of those obscure things that if you know even a little bit about it, you're just walking around and, like, seeing a guy in a Fastenal shirt and going, oh, you know, like, oh, Fastenal, I know you, you know, because I've invoiced, like, a bajillion orders from and to that company. But, it was very stressful, just due to, like, interpersonal, inter-office issues. My bosses and I've never gotten along well with a boss, period. But it was so stressful for me that I started to come home at like 4, because the job ended at 4, and then I'd like eat something, and then I'd go to sleep at like 6 or 7. And then I would wake up at 7 a.m. and I'd have to go back to work. So I was so exhausted and stressed that I just couldn't. And so ultimately, because I was living with my mom, she could see that it was happening, and I was like, can I just quit my job? And she was like, fine. And so I quit my job. But then I spent a while without one, like almost a year.
So what, like, was this after college? Or?
Yeah, this was after college.
And what did you major in?
Global studies.
Global studies.
So I did a lot of studying on translation and stuff. It was kind of the thing I wanted to do, but it's not exactly, like, incredibly lucrative, depending on what you're doing. Yeah. Media in general just isn't lucrative no matter what business you're in. Like, people don't want to pay money for entertainment. Okay. But anyway.
So this would have been, like, 2008?
So 2008 to 2011 is when I had that job.
Okay.
And then I quit it in 2011, and in 2012, in like May, I found a post on Craigslist that was like, we need Japanese translators. Because I was just searching Japanese on any like job siting list just every day to see if anything interesting would come up. And I was like, hey, I could do that. And it was sort of, the way that the market worked was slightly different than it does now. But I actually worked for that company until like 2021 when I got my job at 7 Seas. And I'm trying to get back with them again. If I don't get a different job, I'm just like, give me more work. I don't care. If I'm going to be freelance, I'm at least going to try to be comfortable on freelance. But yeah, it's a lot of work though to expand your client base when you're a freelancer. So it took me many years to get to the point where I have like a decent amount of work that can at least pay my rent most months.
Yeah.
I'm sure things would be better if my employer hadn't forced me to quit all of my freelance jobs after I worked with them. But it's not like I had any other options, so.
And that was the job you worked from 2011 to 2021?
Well, basically, that was a freelance job provider, like a third-party middleman who gets you work. I worked with a number of different companies, but I also had like a full-time job for most of that time. I got a full-time job in 2016, and I didn't lose it until the pandemic. So, I mean, I switched jobs, whatever. But I was doing freelance alongside it the whole time, and I managed to at least be making money enough to like survive on. And I saved up a bunch, which disappeared during pandemic, but them's the bricks.
Yeah, the pandemic did a number on a lot of people.
Yeah, it's really fucking a lot of people up. It's fucking up the kids, too. Like, without the, like, some people are like, parents are awful. They're not doing things with their kids or whatever. And I'm like, well, it's not like, if you're stuck in your house, you're going to think about how you need to get your kid into like a play group because otherwise they won't know how to socialize. But there are people who are complaining about kids going into kindergarten and they're not potty trained, which happens not infrequently, but yeah, it's probably happening slightly more now.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, when kids are just like under stress and stuff, that kind of stuff becomes a lot harder.
Yeah, and the kids can tell when their parents are stressed too, and it's not like any of us have not been stressed since those kids have been born, so there's just a lot going on. I'm sure it must be confusing to be a kid growing up in this post quote unquote pandemic world where it's actually still happening and nobody wants to talk about it. Like, I'm sure it would be, like, a really weird time to be a baby.
Yeah. Yeah. So you started doing translation and stuff, it sounds like about, like, 4 or 5 years out of college, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'd studied, in college, and then I got a lot of practice translating. So now I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah, so did you go in wanting to study Japanese specifically?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just really liked anime and manga. And I was like, bet I can make a career out of this. And then everyone was like, well, you're not going to make a lot of money. And I'm like, eh. And now I'm like, oops. Probably should have thought a little bit harder. Like my sister is a vet, and she's just known that she wanted to be a vet since she was like 11, and she just threw herself into it, and now she's a vet, and she's just like, yep, I did the thing. And I'm like, oh, cool. You make good money. I should have done something like that.
Yeah. No. So,
like, she bought a house. I'm just like,
so she's got the investment.
Yeah, she's on the property ladder.
Yeah. Yeah, were there any particular, is it manga?
A lot of people in America say manga. In Japanese, they pronounce it manga.
Manga.
So that's what I usually say, just because it's harder to switch it, because I have to do that with certain words. Like, if I say karaoke, nobody knows what I mean. But if you say karaoke, they do.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's how they pronounce it in Japanese, it's karaoke. And so, you know, like, and also, because I speak Japanese, sometimes, especially when I'm tired, I'll swap words out in a weird way. Like, in Japanese, when they take medicine, they say they drink it. They drink the pill.
Oh, okay.
It's because in ancient times, like, medicine was all powdered.
Yeah.
So they would put it in, like, a drink, and then they would drink it. Or they'd just go like this, which is basically drinking it. And so, like, sometimes when I'm, like, when I went on a road trip with my sister last weekend, and not last weekend, the weekend before, whatever. We went to Chicago, and then we stopped at A&W on the way home, and I was like, I'm gonna go drink my milk pill so I wanted to get a root beer float. No, it's just like, oh, I said drink again.
Yeah.
Oops.
It's funny how language works like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but were there any, like, particular mangas that, like, really got you into it, or, like,
oh gosh,
really obsessed
well,
with?
you know, they were all really, like, almost all of the manga that got me into it are just like, it was a different time. So there wasn't a lot of stuff for girls. There was just comics. And so I was really into Oh My Goddess, which is essentially like a young man's comic about a guy who calls a hotline because it was created in the 80s. And he gets a goddess on the line, and she's like, I'll grant you any wish. And he's like, I wish you would be my girlfriend. And she's like, okay. And then she becomes his girlfriend, and then there's, like, drama, and also the artist really loves to draw motorcycles, so there's just, like, motorcycles all over the place in this comic. It's pretty good. Like, the drafting is very nice on it. The artist is very good. He's been tapped to do a lot of, like, character design work in other things, too. But I loved Oh My Goddess. It's not very good, though, in retrospect. And you know, I liked Ranma, and there's a new anime for Ranma coming out soon, so I'll probably watch that. But, like, you know, as far as manga goes, it's interesting because there's so much of it. There's a lot of stuff that's just about a lot of different topics. So, like,
I see you have a whole shelf.
Well, this is mostly stuff I got as comps from my former employers. But, like, this book, Dragon Goes House Hunting, is about a elf realtor in a fantasy world trying to find houses for, like, magical creatures. And it's very silly.
Yeah.
And,
very funny premises.
yeah, and, like, you know, there's all sorts of different things you have to know to translate, so, or you have to learn if you want to translate. Like, there's always some story coming up where they're like, time to do a type 5 on the tea ceremony in Japan. Get ready to learn a lot of new vocabulary words.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I imagine, because, yeah, I know there's different, yeah, sometimes there's words that, like, don't really translate, or...
Yeah, and there's also, you know, like, genres and things that they don't have as much of in America, like romance. There's literally reasons for it, you know, like, they still have romance comics in Japan that are really popular, and they're for girls, because they didn't have a guy who came in and said romance comics were horrible and they were going to ruin children's brains, and made them get rid of them.
Yeah.
Same thing with horror comics, which is why Japan has Kazuo Mizo and Junji Ito, and we don't have any of those.
What are those ones?
Oh, Junji Ito did Uzumaki, which is kind of infamously, like, scary. They're doing an anime of it now, but people are upset because the budget kind of crapped out like 2 or 3 episodes in, and his work is really crazy. Uzumaki means spiral. and it's sort of about a town that is being like taken over or poisoned by spirals. So like people in the town turn into shit like snails or whatever, and like they're trying to figure out how to fix it or what the problem is or whether it's a curse or whatever. And ultimately in Junji Ito stories, the answer is usually just, I don't know. Fucked up shit happens sometimes. Get over it. But like Kazuo Umezu is like a famous. It's funny because I'm in the industry, so I know. But like every time I read a comic which is like not a horror comic and is like a comedy comic, and they're doing like their little horror moment, they draw the characters' faces like Kazuo Umezu did. So, like, he did a comic called Cat-Eyed Boy. I think he also did the Disappearing Classroom, or I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically about a bunch of kids who are transported to, like, space in their class. And it's sort of like, the Drifting Classroom.
Okay.
It's a school that is mysteriously transported through time to a post-apocalyptic future, and then it's sort of like The Lord of the Flies or whatever. Okay. Yeah. Oh, he's still alive. Wow.
Yeah. Well, so I'm...
Oh, man, look at that dude.
Yeah. I see.
That's
wow,
he's... an Umez.
He's still going.
He's just doing his shit.
Very stylish.
But yeah, and he finally started to get published in America, which is good for him because, you know, the horror buffs are always like reading shit and going, I feel like this is reference to a thing. But yeah, so basically, like, I think I was interested in becoming like a translator for Japanese comics because I wanted to be a part of bringing more over, because I was like, you know, the more there are, the more likely we are to get stuff that isn't going to be super popular, or that if it's like, basically, as a longtime manga fan, you get to the point where you're like, oh, I really wish I could read. Well, like when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I really wish I could read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure because everybody talks about it and it sounds very weird. But that one they had trouble importing, partially because it is very weird, and also because all the characters are named after, like, musical acts. So, like, there's a character named Duran Duran, and there's another one named, like, I can't think of any of the other characters. There's an REO Speedwagon. So there's just, like, a bunch of random characters with, but, like, some of them, they're like, oh, I don't think that they would want, us using their name. So, like, there's a character in one of the stories that's named Abdul, after Paula Abdul.
Okay.
And they changed his name to, like, something else. And I don't know why, because I'm like, Abdul is a very common name.
Yeah, very common.
But oh well. Anyway, that pissed me off, but most of the characters, you could at least tell, you know, what they're supposed to be or whatever, as far as, like, because some of them have, like, puns later on. There's, like, there'll be, like, characters who are literally, like, named after certain bands or songs by the band. So, like, anyway, but they translated that and brought it over. And so now I'm like, okay, I have to move on to a different one. So it's like, oh, I wish they would translate Ashita no Joe. Oh, they're doing that? I guess I should read that. You know, it's one of those things where it's like, I wanted there to be, you know, like, not universal access necessarily, but, like, more access than we have. It's very interesting to me. I picked up a book recently that's, like, it's, so, around the same time, maybe a little earlier than the housing crisis, the manga bubble crashed. It was partly because a bunch of retailers were going to go out of business, like Borders was holding up a lot of the manga industry because they had this huge section. But in the end, a lot of the business, you know, like that. So this is full of all stuff that was that book. It's up there on the top of the bookshelf. It's full. It's loaded with, like, titles I've never ever heard of because they were published by a company that was about to go under in, like, 3 days. And so I was like, wow, I didn't even know they translated this. And then I'll look and it's like Raijin, and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You know, it makes sense that I didn't know that. But you know, so it's like, but I remember being, you know, a fan at the time and being like, oh, some of the trash manga that I'm just picking up at half price because I want to read it, or Book Off, which is the half price of Japan. Like, I was like, wow, this comic is really weird and kind of obscure and kind of, like, convoluted. I don't know if an American audience would really buy into it. And then I went to, like, the computer lab because we weren't allowed to be on the computer the whole time. So you're like, you can't just spend all your time while you're in Japan on the computer. And I'm like, you watch me. But, you know. I basically looked up that title, and it turned out it was licensed already by Tokyo Pop. And I was like, oh, this is not good, actually. That's a bad sign. They're just picking up anything. You know, they're picking up whatever hits the ground. And then the bubble burst. I'm worried that another bubble is going to burst. I mean, I'm in the industry, so it would be pretty tough for me. But I also have very little control over whether it's going to happen. So, at least I know that the way that anime and manga has sort of penetrated society means that at least I don't really have to explain what my job is to most people. Like, if I'm like, oh, I translate manga, I work for the company that brings out Dragon Ball Z and Naruto. They're just like, oh, okay, I get it. And it's like, that's so nice, because it's really early on I had to explain a lot. Yeah, now there's always at least somebody going, oh yeah, my grandkid is into that shit or whatever. And I'm just like,
yeah, well, I'm curious because, yeah, just within, like, the past decade or so, I feel like manga and anime have sort of had a change in how people perceive them, because, yeah, I feel like they used to be seen as, like, really obscure and, like, you were really weird.
Every so often you would get a chance to watch some on some specific channel, or, like, you're just watching Toonami and, you know, your kids and you're going to school and telling everybody what you saw on Toonami the other day. It's been weird, but, like, I feel like it would probably be weirder to those fans who were older than me, who were, like, trading VHS tapes, you know? Like, in the 80s and 90s. And it's like, I'm sure that they're, like, that they have, like, a more interesting standpoint on what they went through, but for me, I was always of the opinion that, like, well, if it's good, it's gonna appeal to a lot of different kinds of people, so as long as whatever it is good, you know, and, like, there's a lot of, the anime industry is also pushing towards sort of, a lot of, what would I call it? Sort of oversaturation, in the sense that, there's three or four actually, anime streamers, and, like, there's the one that gets almost everything, there's the one that gets everything else, there's Disney Plus, and then there's, like, Retro Crush, which licenses old stuff as, like, license rescues, and I think they do sometimes have their own original stuff, but it's always, like, vintage anime. Anyway. But, like, those four streaming services are picking up most, but not all, anime that comes out in Japan, but also the anime industry is very burdened on the labor end. There's a lot of, like, work and not as many people to do it, and they don't pay very well, and they're really working people very, very hard. So I'm sure something has got to give, you know? I don't know what's going to give, but hopefully it won't be too much of a problem for me, since I'm usually the manga industry is also pretty bad on the labor end, but, I feel like it's kind of like they treat it in a lot of ways like being a sports player, where, like, if you're in your early career, you can do a lot more work, and you might have a weekly comic, which would be like 16 pages every week, and it's a lot of work, and lots of people can't do it. And then, you know, and some people who can do it shouldn't do it. Like the guy who did Yu Yu Hakusho has basically destroyed his back. And now the even more popular manga he's doing, Hunter x Hunter, is like coming out once every, blue moon because he can't work. And it's just like, those are the kinds of things that are going to happen more and more as more people try to do this thing. And also, like, there just has to be a point at which, because there's definitely a like communal, we're doing our thing, we're getting things done thing when you look at like the way that they talk about the amount of labor that they have in like the notes. But like, it does kill people. It's not killed people before.
Yeah, and you say he hurt his back. Like, is that just from like hunching down? Mm-hmm. Just like
most of the time they're drawing at like a table that's low to the ground. Some, like, it's like just like any other place. There'll be people who have their like ergonomic chairs and desks and stuff, and their fancy tools and what have you. But even that stuff is not going to help you that much if you're working constantly with no breaks. There's only so much your body can put up with.
Yeah. Sounds like kind of an intense industry.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it definitely is, in the sense that, like, the people who are in it think about that and not much else. But also, like, I hear a lot of stories about it tangentially because there's nothing a comic artist loves to write about more than being a comic artist.
Yeah.
A little bit self-obsessed, but who isn't really?
Yeah. So did you say you had gone to Japan?
Yeah, I studied abroad there for about 4 months.
Okay, yeah. What was that like?
It's different than it is now, like, but it was nice. One thing that I liked about, like, going there was seeing a place that had very streamlined, very, very safe, public transit. And you could get almost anywhere in the metropolitan area on the bus or the train in Tokyo. It's less easy outside of that, but I didn't really have to spend that much time outside of the city. But yeah, it made me be, like, really angry when I got back and I just started driving around again. I was like, fuck this shit.
Yeah. And so did you go to school around here?
I went to Hamline.
Hamline. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I took my Japanese classes at McAllister, though.
Oh, okay. Mihipio?
Oh.
Yes. Do you want to introduce us to...
Oh, this is my cat, Koske.
Koske.
He would have been making noises around here.
Yes, you've maybe heard him in the background already.
My little baby.
When did you get Koske?
I had a cat from 2007 to 2020, and he passed away, and I was like, well, I can't get out of bed if I don't have a cat to take care of, so I got Koske, and my mom was like, you should get a kitten, because, then he'll live longer, and you'll get to have his whole life by him, and I'm like, because I was sad that, I got my cat when he was like 4, so I missed out on some good years of his life, but, I forgot that kittens are a pain in the ass, so...
So you got Koske when he was a kitten?
Yep, and then the princess, I got her when she was an adult. She was like a feral, so that's why she hasn't come out.
Okay, yeah, I did not realize you had another cat.
Cats, yeah, so. I have 2 cats. And that's why I have to have the door, because the door keeps him from eating her food, which she will just let him do, because she doesn't give a shit. But yeah, and so, like... Koske and the princess are starting to get along a little better, which is nice, but, like, she was always very anxious about him. He just doesn't give a shit. He'll just run into the room and she'll be like, you have penetrated my bubble, and he's just like, fine. Go away then. And she's like, I guess I will, but she's been trying to smack him a little more often lately, so that's nice.
Assert her.
She's getting a little bit more conscious that he's not going to stop being a pain in the ass if she doesn't ever assert herself.
Um, but yeah, okay. So you went to school around here.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like besides going to Japan, like most of your experience is living around the Twin Cities.
Basically,
have
yeah.
you gone anywhere else besides?
I mean, not to live. You know, like I've been on trips and stuff, but I've lived here basically my whole life. I thought about moving to like Seattle because I was really tired of the winter, and things were not going so well for me. But all the people I like are here. You know, my friends live here, and my family is here, and I only have so many of them, so I might as well keep them.
Yeah, community is a big.
It's so important, and also the properties, like the property values on the West Coast are just horrible. There's no way. I would die.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true.
Like half the time you see people moving here, they're like, "Oh, it's much cheaper than Chicago," and I'm like, "That's true." But like, Chicago is pretty cheap compared to like San Francisco, which I have had to think about a lot, because if I ever wanted to work in-house, because there's really not a lot of advancement for a translator. You basically just have to like keep doing it. But all the companies are on one of the coasts. They're either in California because it's a Japanese company, or they're in New York because New York is where publishers are. So, and I'm like, I don't want to live in either of those places.
Yeah, no, both places that have notoriously high rent. So.
Yeah, the at least on the plus side, I have a chance for remote work now.
Yes.
You know, as opposed to before where that wasn't really a thing.
Yes, I get one all right thing coming from the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, not the people who don't want you to work remote still don't want you to work remote, because, like, I remember I was watching a video that was about this guy who was, like, an influencer for, like, going to work. Yeah, he would be like, I go to work on Friday because I'm having the most fun when I'm at work. And I'm like, what's your deal? Well, it turned out his dad was like the CFO of a company that owned office real estate. And it's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That explains
Of course,
it.
you have so much fun when you go to work.
Yeah.
It's like...
Of course you have so much fun when you go to work. Your dad owns the office building.
Office. Like, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's just genuinely trying to, you know, get his dad some help, because he's like, well, what can I do? I guess I'll become an influencer. It's like, nobody likes to go to work. What kind of a dumb influencer idea is that?
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, for a lot of people, it adds a commute that you have to think about.
I mean, you know, I do miss talking to people. Like, I miss having coworkers, like, bothering me, or being able to go bother my coworkers. But even then, your bosses didn't want you to do any of that shit. So it's like, well, why do you want me to come back into the office? Like, all the reasons that you would want me to come back are so that you could stalk me, you know? Like, you could do that online. You just do it online now.
Yeah.
And then I'll download a little program that moves my mouse around, and then you'll have to download a program that detects that program, and then we'll continue having this dance until capitalism dies.
Yes, the need to observe the workers.
Yeah.
Make sure every little thing is...
It's like, it reminds me of how I felt about mathematical proofs when I was in school. I was really annoyed, because like, well, you know how I did it. I know how I did it. Why do you need me to write it down? And then they were like, because we don't actually know how you did it. You could have just done it wrong and got the right answer accidentally. And I'm like, and? No, but, But, like, it's like that in the same sense that, like, you should probably know what they're doing. You know?
Yeah, it's good to...
Probably at least look at how the gears are turning.
Yeah. So... Okay, so you... settled down... When did you come into this apartment, I guess?
2021.
Okay.
No, and after 2021 was when I adopted the princess. And so they've been having trouble getting along for 3 years.
Oh no.
Well, 3 years is November, I think.
Okay.
But, like, whatever, you know. It's tough because you can't exactly force them to like each other. You just have to sort of let them get to it and deal with it.
Yeah, cats are very much like that.
And my sister, who, again, is a vet, did tell me that they recently did a study on cats in feral colonies who are ostensibly acting how cats are naturally supposed to act, since they're relatively successful. Like, they don't say that about feral dog colonies, because the feral cat colonies, especially with human help, tend to be okay. Anyway, what they recently observed a group of feral cats and found that it took 3 years for cats outside of the clouder, which is what they call it. Sorry.
No worries.
To like actually get in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that feels like a long time.
Yeah.
But also,
it seems like maybe
we're getting there. We're almost there. We Koske.
Have to see.
I think it's mostly just like trying to make sure that that you guys know what's going on with each other.
Yeah. Give you a second to drink some water.
I get the hiccups a lot.
The hiccups. But yeah, I noticed you have an N64.
I do. I'm not hooked up right now, though.
Did you play it growing up?
No. Well, yes. So, when I lived at that house in on Englewood, one of the people in the basement, like, she had some friends over, and one of them just left a bunch of N64 games.
Nice.
Yeah, and of course this was like within a decade of the N64 coming out, probably. So, she just was like, do you want these? Because I took all the ones I wanted. And so I was like, yeah, because one of the games in there was Harvest Moon, which at the time was worth like $60. And now, well, let's just see. It's probably still worth a decent amount of money. But that was the game that I played when I was a kid because my cousin had it and he had an N64. And I remember wanting to wake up early to play the game, which I've never wanted to do for anything. I was like, maybe if I get up early, I can play some of the game before everybody else wakes up. And I'm just like, that's crazy. That's the craziest thing I've ever said. But it must mean I love this game. And yeah, I still love that game.
Yeah.
64.
I'm not sure I actually know what that game is.
It's a farming simulator.
Okay.
It's basically like, it's the sequel or the threequel of the game that inspired Stardew Valley. So like, it's been really frustrating for me as someone who's been playing Harvest Moon, and so Harvest Moon was a title owned by the American licensors, and so when the Japanese company decided to do something else and go with a different licensor, they stole the name. So now the game is called Story of Seasons. But I played those games for so long that it was kind of frustrating to me that everyone was getting really excited about this game that was essentially a step up from the original SNES version. And I was just like, well, I could play a game that is basically exactly like this on my Game Boy Color, so... I mean, it's not. It's slightly different in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, I would hope so.
Oh, it was 2. It was 2, not 3.
2, okay.
Yeah. Price. Oh. Yeah, it's like $100 without the box.
Oh, wow. Okay. So,
With the box, it's like 1,000, but almost nobody has it, so it doesn't really matter.
so it's one of those games.
Yeah, it's one of those games that's worth money and people like it. And so I'm glad I have it, even if I haven't been able to play it, like, ever.
Yeah.
I have a hard time setting things up, and I have a hard time giving myself a break to do something fun, you know?
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I was like, I don't love the idea of working this job I just interviewed for, but having a job that isn't writing might be good for me, because then I have time to actually write.
Like...
Not for work.
Yeah.
The stuff I want to write. I did write something for the blog, but I didn't like it as much as I wanted to, so I was like, I'll write a different thing that I also wanted to write, but then I didn't do that. So anyway.
Well, you want to give some context of what that would be for?
Oh, it would be
how we met?
Right. We know each other because Lucid was on the Hamline Midway Renters committee for a minute with me and came to my door and was like, do you want to be on our committee? And I was like, sure, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been able to do any work with them lately because I've been struggling over my own just ability to pay rent, so...
Yeah.
And I was like, sorry guys, and they're like, it's cool. I'm like, that's good, because I don't like... I don't like it when I volunteer for something and then I don't do anything.
Yeah, no. Well, it can be really tough, especially if you're, like, sort of in between figuring out financial stuff. I mean, it's a big reason of why, you know, they had my position was to try to get more people onto the council, because it's hard.
Yeah. It's just, like, hard to be alive, and adding extra stuff on there is always going to make it more of a problem.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, I guess what did draw you to the Renter Engagement Committee?
I think it's easy in our current political landscape to be really miserable and upset all the time. And, like, doing anything is better than nothing, so that's why I try to do something. And when it's something that, you know, it's like just someone coming up and saying, hey, do you want to help out with this? And then I'm like, sure, I will. And then, you know, it makes me feel better than not doing anything. Not that I'm doing that much, but, you know, at least someone knows that I want to.
Yeah. Well, I think it's Pete Seeger who said we all just have our little teaspoons of sand pouring on the scales.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wish my teaspoon was a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Nice if it was like a tablespoon or a shovel or something.
Yeah. But, you know, gotta start where you can.
That's true. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and I'm curious, so I know you've gone, there's community meals around here at the Zion Community Center, I think 3 days a week now. Did you know about those before you got involved with the coalition, or how long have you...
Well, I didn't know about the Tuesday and Friday ones, but I did go on Thursday when I lived here in 2016. And it was different. There was a lot of stuff going on. Like, there were, you know, people I would meet there, and I'm like, what are they up to now, you know? Because it's been a while.
Yeah, and it was still a, like, free or, like, pay what you can.
It was free. It was a free community lunch on Thursday, and then they'd have groceries. But mostly it would just be, like, hanging out and talking to people, because I was lonely and didn't have a ton of work, just like now. So.
Yeah, like, growing up, did you go to, like, community meals a lot? Or,
no.
Like,
I didn't really start going to community meals until I started working freelance. And I was, like, so broke. And I also, you know, had to cook for myself only. Didn't have, like, the best organizational skills as far as my kitchen and my like ability to cook at any given time. So just having a time when I could go and not have to worry about food was nice. I felt weird about it because when I was living in so my brother, when we lived together, we lived in Bloomington, so right off of 98, and I would go to a church around there, and the people there were always like, "Oh my God, you're so young. What's wrong?" And I'm like, I don't know, shit's tough out there. Like, I just want food, you know?
What do you want me to say?
Yeah, like, I, you know, like, my dad died. Is that enough, you know?
Yeah.
But, like, the whole, like, I did have sort of ingrained in me in a lot of ways the, idea that being poor was something to be like ashamed of, or getting, you know, free stuff should make you feel bad or whatever. And it's not like it didn't make me feel bad, but it was mostly just people like when I was in high school, briefly me and my brother and sister who were in, I think both of them were in elementary school. And then my brother went to junior high. But whatever. We were on, like, free or reduced lunch. And you know, like, my sister felt bad about it. And I felt a little bad about it. But in high school, people are not going to make fun of you. I'm sure my brother got it really bad, though. Because middle school sucks. But, like, ultimately, I just was happy to have the food and the less stress at home and the this and that, so I didn't really care that much about the way that people acted about getting free food or whatever. And so I was always really frustrated when, you know, I'd heard stories about lunch debt or what have you. But, like, I tried to get over that feeling of, like, shame by being more practical about it. Because, like, when it comes to the churches, or when it comes to Zion, they've always got a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And someone's got to take that stuff, otherwise it's going to go in the trash and nobody's going to make any use of it. Mm-hmm. So it might as well be me, you know, mm-hmm. if they're giving it away.
Yeah, no. Well, yeah, I think what's cool about Zion is, like, I don't know, people think of, like, free meals or free groceries as something that's for, like, yeah, people who are going through tough times or something. But
and
they're
then
really,
there's also, like, means testing, but they don't do that at Zion, which is nice. They're just like, what's your name?
Yeah, no. Well, and it also, like, they're really just, like, no, like, this is more about, like, just that food should be free and not, like, where it, like, if you want food, like, come and get it, like, you know.
And it's not, like, about, like, us feeding the horrible poor who suck, you know?
Yeah, no, it's just...
It's sad, though, because one of the ladies who's worked there ever since before Craig came about, she was like... I mean, not before, you know, because he was still there, but she's, like, a little tiny lady. Mm-hmm. She does it on Thursdays. And Anthony was telling me about how she will simultaneously be like, no, we're giving everyone diabetes, but also be like, do we have desserts? Do we have enough desserts? We should bake some cookies. We don't have enough desserts. And I'm like, I mean, mood, but... I wanted dessert, so what was I going to say?
Well,
Let's not bake them.
No.
Can give them the diabetes.
Yeah, no.
But I do like it as, like, a community place to sort of hang out and, like, see people and meet people who, because, you know, there's definitely a lot of people who wouldn't want to go there, you know, because they would feel weird about it. And the nice thing about that place is that the people who are there are never weird at you. I mean, you know, like, some of the people are weird because they're just weird, but they're not, like, judging you for getting food because that's what they're there to do too. It's like, You know, I'm just, it's just like hard though to make people want to take that first step. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what living in that house on the corner of Aldine and Minnehaha sort of taught me, was that, like, if I wasn't going to do things myself, like, if I wasn't going to make myself go and do things, then I wasn't going to do anything, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, I know community meals are nice, because, once you start going more frequently, mm-hmm. It's like you do see people again, and like
it's kind of like
people recognize you.
A neighborhood school cafeteria.
Yeah.
And I wish there was more of that, because like that was the reason that school cafeterias were called school cafeterias, was because there was a place called a cafeteria you could just go to get food.
Yeah.
And hang out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that expensive. Mm-hmm. And some people, what people don't really get who grew up in my generation and, earlier, is that most of the time throughout history, people have been cooking in bulk. Just it's much more convenient and easy to do. So if you've got a lot of recipes, or if you've got a lot of potatoes, everyone gets all their potatoes together and they make a potage. And it's now we all have potage.
And bulk is, we're not talking
we're talking
single person meal prep. We're talking about
we're talking everybody eats the same meal in the village today.
Yeah, no.
And it's you do have that to the degree that, it exists in the form of fast food. But,
that gets so expensive.
Well, not only that, but the factors and reasons behind why fast food is cheap and what fast food is cheap and what they choose to charge for it, there's so many different motivations behind that. And the motivation to sell more is always on the very top. So always they're going to try to make you, addicted to fucking nacho fries. And now I'm addicted to nacho fries.
They're really good.
They're good. They're good, but here's the thing. In other countries, some of these things aren't allowed. There's that Josh Johnson joke about people coming to America and eating a single Dorito and then becoming Dorito addicts that are strung out. And it's it's a joke, but it's also not a joke, because there are things that we allow them to put in food that other countries don't, because they're well, what if it's addictive, or we don't know what it's going to do, or that's got cochineal in it, and so it's going to make anybody who's allergic to beetles die, or whatever. It's in Japan, they have laws that say how much sugar they can have in their stuff. They don't put sugar in bread in Japan, or if they do, it's not very much. It's not like it is here. When I came back from Japan, I felt like I was eating cake when I ate sliced bread.
Yeah.
Because they just don't put sugar in things. And if you go to an Asian bakery or an Asian grocery and you get the cake that they sell there, whether it's a roll cake or there's a place called Bravo Bakery that makes cream puffs, and they also make some cakes, and the cakes are really good, and they're not that sweet. They just don't have the level of, the thing about American cakes is that when you eat them, you are grinding sugar between your teeth, and I think that there's definitely a degree to which that feels decadent to the American people, and it's how it's supposed to be. But I don't think that it is.
No, I mean, yeah, I've definitely, bitten into some things, and it's just wow, that's so much sugar.
Yeah, I can't drink fountain drinks anymore, really. I mean, I have pre-diabetes, and I do still eat a lot of candy and, ice cream and sugar and stuff, but, I don't like the way that I feel when I eat, a slice of American cake. I feel like my body has become grainy because it's too sugared.
Yeah, it's too much energy all at once.
And so the fact that we Americans want our Fruit Loops to be very neon means that we're constantly eating all this shit nobody really understands.
Yeah, I know in other countries they don't use artificial dyes as much, so...
Well, in Canada, if you go there, their Fruit Loops look weird because they're dyed with, like, beets and shit. And it's like, they're not going to taste any different. They just look different. And, you know, I understand, especially kids being like, ugh, about that. But also, like, well, they shouldn't have that much sugar in them. But, you know, it's one of those arms race things where it's like, if every company starts putting more sugar in everything, suddenly it's like, well, sugar is so cheap because we subsidize it here. And then everyone's wandering around going, how come everyone's obese? Like, I don't know, man. Maybe you should ask yourself that.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard, too, that, like, for a long time we really blamed fat for, like, obesity, but it's actually sugar.
Yeah, when I was a kid, it was all day, every day. Low fat, low fat, low fat, low fat whipped cream, low fat this, low fat that. And because fat takes up, you know, fat is something important for your body to feel satiety, they'd have to put sugar in there to make sure that you still felt that satiety even if there was no fat. And now, you know, well, of course they'd have like the low fat, no sugar version, and it would have like sucralose in it, and it would taste like, you know, 16 sugar canes exploding in your mouth.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. It was a crazy time, you know. Nobody really knew. I do remember my mom bitching about it in like the late 90s that everything that says low fat has lots of sugar in it, and it would bother her because she had hypoglycemia. So, you know, and she was very diet culture. So she was always complaining about that, and I'm just like, then buy the full fat. Just buy a full fat.
Yeah.
You know, and then of course, like, it was very Jack Sprat because I would always eat, like, the fat off of my pork chop, and my mom would be like, that's gross, never do that. And of course I am a big fat person, and my mom is not. And so it's like, I know this seems like, you know, you're owning me just by our physicality, but I'm enjoying myself, so.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you know this, but the fat off the pork chop, when you mix it up with the pork chop, it's, like, super good, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's something that, like, I mean, for a long time, people, why would you think of that as something you don't eat? Like, it's like, that's more food. That's
Yeah,
like,
and it's not like it tastes bad,
Yeah.
you know? It tastes like food.
Yeah.
It tastes bad if that's all you're eating.
Yeah.
But, you know, you gotta mix it up with stuff.
Yeah.
Everything in moderation, right, Koske?
Yes.
He doesn't think so.
He doesn't, yeah,
No.
no.
But it's funny because I realized that, like, if he'll come after me asking for more food after I've already fed him,
Yeah.
because his feeder doesn't always spit everything out, and by doesn't always, I mean never does, so I have to shake it to get the last bit out. And of course I trained him to train me to come and shake it for him. But, if I just wait, like 20 minutes, then the food hits his stomach and he's not hungry anymore. He's like, oh, the food is here.
Yeah.
my DoorDash came.
Just,
And it's like, I do that too, Koske.
yeah, that is real.
So understandable. I'm like, oh, why do I still want ice cream? I just ate like half a pint of ice cream.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll just wait.
Just wait. Oh, no, I'm not. Yeah, I do that a lot. I'll, eat something. I'm like, I'm still hungry. Start making an entire other thing. Then by the time it's done, you're like,
oh, well, at least I have this thing and I can put it in the fridge and have it later.
Yeah, it is, you know. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been tough because of the inflation and not having any money and like going, well, if I don't buy any food, and I might be able to pay rent and my, you know, whatever. So it's like, it would be nice if that wasn't how things were. I'm sure people have been saying that for the last 1,000 years, but...
Yeah. Well, it's really... Yeah, I don't think people realize just how much the, like... Because when you're tight on money, it's almost like you're constantly budgeting in your head, like, all
you're
day,
just anxious
every day.
all the time.
Yeah.
You're like, jaw is set. It's stressful. It's very awful. And like, and it's hard because if you are in a certain type of position, it's difficult to have it get any better. You know, like, it's difficult to, like, and it's even scary. Like, I'm worried about this job because I'm like, well, if I get this job, then I'll have the job's insurance and I won't have Minnesota healthcare anymore. Or Medicaid expansion. And it's like, that costs, you know, that's much, it's not like it's cheaper in the sense that I don't pay for it and I don't pay for anything. Mm-hmm. But like, you know, even on a good salary, I have a lot of health problems. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, if I am going to get this job, I better start getting some health care real quick here. But, you know, like, there's no easy way to get help. You basically have to lean on your family or the people who care about you and hope that you can get them paid back before they get annoyed enough at you to, like, ask you to pay them back.
Yeah.
And it's like, my friend just lost their dad, and I owed them like $1,000. And I'm like, man, I wish I had money, because if I did, I could pay that back so that they might not be so stressed about this dead dad, 2 dead dads, and then also something going on with the house.
Oh, God. Yeah, when it rains, it pours.
Yeah, my friend, their dad got sick and died, and then, like, while they were figuring out what to do about getting their dad in hospice, their partner's dad went missing, and it turned out he had burned himself on, he had smoked with oxygen on, and he had COPD, so he burned himself, and he passed away like 3 days after.
Oh, wow.
Their dad passed away. So it's 2 dead dads in one summer.
Oh,
well,
God.
And it's just like, you know, Theo was there for me when my dad died, so I was just like, really I mean, I liked her dad too. I mean, their dad. I liked him a lot. And like, it's tough because I want to be there for them, but also it's like super triggering.
Yeah.
And so, but some part of me is like, there's definitely things I'd like to remember about when my dad was sick. Like, it would be nice if I could remember all the good stuff that my friends said and not just that they were at the funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine it was a really blurry time.
Can't remember much at all.
I
wrote a journal, but I have not read it.
Oh, yeah, but that's a lot to... That would have been in high school?
No, I was in college.
College, okay.
Yeah, he died in 2008. So... Housing crash, dead dad.
Yeah.
Not great, not fun.
No. Yeah.
But, you know, I think it's better for me because I was in college. My brother was in high school, and so was my sister. So, you know, they were kids.
Yeah. So you're the oldest.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
My brother, who is about 3 years younger than me, is married and has a kid, and he lives in Maplewood or something. No, I'm wrong. It's definitely not Maplewood. It's Eden Prairie. That's where it is. And he just got a new job, so he's all excited about that. And my sister, maybe she lives in Eden Prairie. Maybe I'm making a mistake. It doesn't matter. I know where their addresses are. They're on my phone. But right, yeah. So my sister is about 7 years younger than me.
Okay.
So she was like 16 when he died.
Yeah.
And that must have been tough. You know, it was hard for me to keep track of that kind of shit. Yeah. But we talked a little bit about it on our way home from Chicago the other weekend. So that was nice.
Yeah. Are you close with your siblings?
I mean, it's tough because I was the oldest, and then this horrible thing happened just as all of them were sort of doing their thing. And also, I remember when I was in high school just essentially not wanting anything to do with my siblings. You know, just like, I'm playing this video game. I mean, not like I hated them or whatever. We would hang out. And, you know, like, I would bother them sometimes. And, like... But I was always, like, bothering them in a way that wasn't in charge of them. You know, like, I wasn't about to tell them to clean their rooms or take a shower or anything. But, like, I remembered recently that I did a lot more of that in middle school and before. So, like, because my mom was really going through it. She has a joint condition the same as me, and her back was going out all the time, and it was really bad for her. And I think she got into PT and it got better, but she would be really depressed sometimes. And, you know, when you're, like, 12... and your younger brother is 9, and your baby sister is, like, 6 or whatever, you don't want your mom to be saying some shit to them, certain shits. And so I mentioned to my sister that I felt a little bit better about the way I was a sibling, because now that I've remembered, you know, all the shit that mom said to me that fucked me up, but not to them, because I was like, don't say that to them, it'll fuck them up. So I feel like I've at least earned my medal, you know, for that one. But, you know, it's tough because, like, I have a really hard time showing any weakness, you know?
Yeah, older sibling.
So I mean, you know, that, and also just, like, our family was kind of like, we like to poke each other a lot. Not, like, necessarily in, like, super mean ways usually, although we definitely got... I definitely said things that were more mean than I meant them to be. But really it's more like, I think a lot about my mom and how I don't really want my family to be, like, you know, have a lot of time exposed to me when I'm that depressed. Because I tend to say some shit, you know, so... That's the problem, is that I'm really going through it. And when I wasn't going through it, it's the worst. Because when I have a job, I'm always incredibly busy. And I can't do anything fun. And then when I don't have a job, I have no money. So I can't do anything fun anyway.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, well, I have a lot of money to buy dolls with. And so now I have a ton of dolls. But, you know.
Yeah, are these... I have a partner who collects Monster High dolls.
Oh, these are Rainbow High.
Rainbow High.
Yeah, the ones with the big eyes are Rainbow
High.
I do have some Monster High dolls.
Okay.
There's one over there. And
okay.
I'm working on a couple of customs. But yeah, cool. I do have a few. I have a few Monster Highs. And those were the last dolls I bought, because Rainbow High is basically circling the drain. It was, like, the most popular line for a short spate in, like, between 2020 and 2023-ish. Okay. But I think that they weren't getting as much money back on their investment as they... Oh, that is a Monster High doll, yes.
I recognize that one, actually.
But, like, they had very high-quality... accessories and clothing, and they had, like, a price point that was less high, I would say. It was like a premium price point, but ultimately I think that they did not get the, like, take up that they wanted to, and so now they're pivoting to something else and doing cheaper joints and stuff, and I'm like, well, that sucks, but on the plus side, all the people panicking about it means that I will probably be able to sell the dolls that I don't want for a decent price.
There you go.
At least there's that.
Yeah. And what is this doll's name?
Caddy Noir.
Caddy Noir. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to buy her because I was like, she's big and fat. I love her.
Yes, I know that. Yeah, they've been trying to have
more. They've been doing more body diversity. Because the original Monster High was bad as far as body diversity went. I mean, no dolls at the time had body diversity, but
yeah.
this is really a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty
a little bit much for me.
Stick thin.
Yeah. Which is part of the reason why I like Rainbow Highs so much, is that they sort of have more, their bodies are a little bit bigger. They look more cartoony, and so they're less likely to really tweak my "why is this bitch so skinny?" vibes, like the way the Monster High dolls did.
Yeah. Have you collected, since you were a kid, or is it?
I liked dolls a lot when I was a kid, but my mom, and a lot of moms at the time, not like her only, but my mom was a little bit like, I don't think dolls are good for you because of they're too sexy or whatever, or you have to be grown up now and you don't play with dolls anymore. And so all of my Barbies went to my sister, and I wasn't like, it felt silly to me because I was allowed to ask for like toys but not dolls. And that was like when I was like 8 or 9, so I don't really remember a time when I was allowed to play with dolls, but I play with my sister's dolls. And ultimately, I realized that throughout the entire original Monster High run, in 2011 through 2015, I will be walking through the aisles looking at all the dolls and trying to decide which one I wanted to buy and really wanting to buy one, but then ultimately being like, no, I won't buy a doll. And so I was just like, because I would be looking at, like, posts about dolls, or I'd be looking online at doll information, and I would be like, I remember that one, I almost bought it. I remember that one, I almost bought it. And I would just be like, I should probably stop feeling this way. I should probably stop letting myself feel this way. Just buy something if I really like it. So I started buying dolls. And I think it's one of those things where, like, I also, at one point, started buying Figuarts, which are 1/12 scale costume superheroes from Japan, and I still have those, but I'm not gonna probably buy a ton more. It's just gonna be one of those things where I have some dolls, but not this many necessarily.
Yeah. Do you remember when you bought your first doll, as an adult, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
She was a Cave Club Tella. Cave Club was like a little... They kind of look like trolls. I mean, I have some around somewhere. I don't know where, though. I think Tella's over there. But, like, they were basically, like, they called the line the world's first best friends. And because after Monster High stopped being manufactured in, like, 2016 or 2015 or whatever, they would do Mattel, because Mattel does Monster High too, would do like other Barbie sideline dolls, and that's one of them. That's a Wild Hearts crew up there. She was like actually kind of big and fat in a way that the Kirby Barbies weren't even, so I was like, I had to buy her. But I liked Tella because she had dark skin and purple hair, and it reminded me of a custom I have been working on doing for like 100 years. Because that's part of the reason I got back into it, is because I watched people customizing dolls, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to make my own toy, And so I'm doing that, but also, like, it's just nice to be able to... I think a lot of the things that I don't do, or I don't do right, or I don't do well, I'm sort of yelling at myself about them in my head in my mom's voice. And so just... She still doesn't really like that I'm interested in dolls or get it. But she does sometimes buy me them for, like, Christmas presents and birthday presents and stuff. So that's better than, like, before.
Yeah, it's some change.
And I've managed to get a few of the dolls that I, like, wanted when I was little and liked, but couldn't get. Like that one. That's the 1996 holiday Barbie.
Okay,
the one on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because, like, it was hard to get holiday Barbies, not because people don't buy them, and they do buy them, but because they don't want you to open them or play with them.
Yes.
Yeah, and so, like, there's a lot of, like, if you go online, you could probably find 1,000 of those in box for, like, $20, $30. But I got that one at the thrift store, so I'm fine with it. Okay. And then I did a little restore, because those dolls have Kanekalon hair, which is a very specific kind of hair that they don't use anymore. And Koske loves to try to eat it.
Oh, Koske.
You're naughty. You're a naughty boy.
Oh, that's funny.
Anyway, I feel like we're just talking about a bunch of random shit and not really talking about, like, tenant experiences.
Well, yeah, no, that's, I mean, I like to sort of have a picture of, like, who you are as a person.
Yeah, because it's not like you're going to take a picture of my house. Please don't.
Yeah, no.
I don't have a lot of money, or I don't have a lot of nice house for you to take a picture of.
No worries.
I also don't have a lot of money, but... but yeah, like, I'm a little surprised that I decided to go all in on dolls because of the house on the Aldine and Minnehaha that I lived in, where one of the roommates was like a mannequin hoarder.
Oh, okay. That's like giant dolls.
Yeah, and I hated that. Yeah. Well, it's different because if I walk out here and there's a doll behind me, I don't go, huh! Because I think there's a person behind me. Yeah. And I did do that. Because it was scary. If when we were moving out, she moved them all out of her bedroom because they had been all in her bedroom before. And just had them in random places around the house. So whenever I came out of the laundry room, there was just a guy standing next to the door.
Yeah, no, I'll jump at things that aren't even human shaped sometimes. So I can imagine that would get old.
It was not great. She also had a cat in there that she kept locked in there because her cat and my cat didn't get along, and her cat was messed up. I presume it was messed up before I moved in, but well, like, it was very angry and scared all the time. And the thing is, it had been locked up for a couple of months, so it's before I found out that was even happening, really. So it's possible it wasn't like that at first, but
yeah, that's too bad.
And it's also entirely possible that my cat bullied her because, you know, he was a precious and sweet boy for me, but I don't know if he was like that all the time.
Yes. Yeah, no. Well, I'm curious. So you went to college, and then you've sort of lived in a few places on and off with your parents, a few different apartments. Do you, have you noticed any sort of significant differences at the different places you've stayed, or similarities because you're renting, or?
In the sense of, like, how I'm treated, or, like, money, or what?
Yeah, no, I mean, anything, really.
I felt like the time that I was living in an apartment, or living in a room in a house, was probably the weirdest time for that, because, like, I was paying the guy over bank transfers, and it was, like, $750 a month or something, I want to say, and it was room and board. And so I would be like, but it always felt awkward to be eating in the kitchen. And, you know, I didn't spend really any time outside my room because it was just like, you know, the kids weren't allowed to watch TV. They weren't allowed much screen time. And so I couldn't sit in the living room and watch TV because then the kids might come in and start watching it with me.
So this is like a rent by the room, like you don't know the other people.
I didn't know any of them until I moved in. And, you know, like, it was a weird situation. Because, like, the dude worked from home, and I worked from home too, because I was just doing freelance then. And he was, like, doing something with the Wells Fargo, the bank. But also, I think ultimately their house got foreclosed on. And that was part of the reason why they were having so much trouble. Like, and I was like, but aren't I paying rent? I don't. You know, it's like, I'm not going to fuss about what a guy does to keep his, you know, girlfriend and her kids housed, even though they broke up and kicked me out.
Yeah.
Like, the whole situation there felt very up in the air and uncomfortable. And, like, I didn't have a car at the time. I would borrow my mom's car sometimes, but...
And where was this house again?
This was in Roseville.
Roseville? Okay.
And, like, there were some things within walking distance, so I'm pretty familiar with Lexington and Larpenteur, because it's pretty close to there. And, like, I recently drove by and I was like, oh, that Mexican restaurant is gone. You know?
Yeah.
It was one of those places where they'll have just like a really, like, this was a thing that they did a lot back in the day, but it's one of those places where they still did that thing where they'll give you like a really nasty meal to have with your drink for free.
Oh.
So they had like a nacho bar.
Yeah.
And I was broke as shit then too, so I'd go there sometimes and just like get a drink and then eat at the nacho bar.
Yeah. That's how you get through sometimes.
Sometimes. Also, there was a Chinese buffet over there that I would go to all the time. Because back when I was like super broke, I would go to Chinese buffets. Like, not infrequently, because I would just be like, I'm so tired of not filling my stomach.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat until I barf.
No, well, it's... Yeah, if you, like... Yeah, if you can, like... You're eating meals, but they're just, like, always not quite enough.
Yeah.
That, like, gets really...
Or for me, I think, because I'm just not very good at understanding my own nutritional balance, if I'm broke and I'm not eating as much, I will eat foods that are, like, missing something, and I won't know what it is, and so I'll just go to a buffet and eat a bunch of stuff, because then it's like, well, it's gotta be in there somewhere.
Yeah, get all the nutrients somehow.
You know, like, I know that there's always something, like... going on with me when I really want like fried oily foods.
Yeah.
You know?
Sort of the buffet is like a multivitamin, multi-macronutrient supplement.
And then sometimes if you're really sneaky about it, you can get Tupperware out.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, those were the days. I don't go to buffets anymore because I did also gain some weight, and I was just like, this is not worth it. I have to use the restroom, do you mind?
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead.
Cool. I'm going to take my phone.
Just stand up and stretch quick.
Yeah, good idea. We've been talking for like 2 hours.
Yeah, no, it's good, I like it.
I'm back.
Hello.
How was your walk?
Great. Great. All stretched out now.
Two steps. Yeah, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, no. It's fun looking at these little...
Oh yeah, I'm working on those customs right now. That one on the bottom is supposed to look like my cat, and the one on the top is supposed to look like a fur Pokemon.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yes, that's why she has that crazy widow's peak.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, I'm having trouble blocking the colors in on that one, but I don't know, I'll figure it out.
That's, part of the process, part of the fun.
And the black paint, it like sort of leaked.
Oh, yeah.
It does this thing sometimes where it moves around because of the chemical reactions in the plastic, which is there's so much of it. You would really be shocked to know how just unsafe it is.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, it's crazy. We really are in the chemical age, microplastic era.
Well, at least I know my balls aren't filled with microplastics.
There you go. Bright side or something. But yeah, so I'm curious. Okay, so you lived in a rent by the room situation, which
Yes.
I've never done that myself, but I stayed with someone for 2 weeks who was, I don't know.
Yeah.
They're kind of weird situations.
Well, it's like, I definitely felt like an interloper the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And there was definitely like, they tried to engage me and talk. There were kids there, so you can't exactly ignore kids completely. And like, but I can't really stop thinking about, because it was just tough to be in that situation and to also be like trying to find my own work. I definitely put like 200 hours into Story of Seasons when I was living there because I was just so out of it. And then I had to ask people for money when they kicked me out to help me move because I couldn't afford to even buy stuff to pack with,
Yeah.
And like when I was living there, there was a point at which they were playing this old game. And it was like one of those old games that's like, it was an old board game. And it was like a D&D style board game. And like, it had all these convoluted rules. And that's one of the reasons why I never really joined them when they had their board game nights. Is because I'm just not... I played Guillotine. That's an easy game to play. But like, stuff like... SOCOM or whatever, it's just like, or there's this one game about aliens that has a lot, it's like an app, and I'm just like, no.
Don't want to have to remember a bunch of rules.
Yeah, I don't want to have to remember, I'm not good at that, I get upset, and I get really bored.
Yeah, having to...
Yeah, maybe that's the one. Basically, like, they had an argument about a video or a board game that was vintage, and how much you sell the magic sword for in the board game.
Wow, very, very serious discussion.
And they were getting really, because I was outside, or they were in the living room and I was in my bedroom. They were getting really loud about it, and I was just like, this is. And I remember I was hearing the argument because I had my door open, so I usually left my door open.
Yeah.
Even though they purposefully, like, put a cat door into it so that I could close it, which was nice of them. But I had to creep really, really quietly to the door so I could close it, and they wouldn't know that I was hearing them fight, Like,
yeah.
Oh, it was so awkward.
Yeah, that's sort of a weird part of those situations. Like, you don't really know the other people you're living with, so, yeah.
I mean, that's true in some roommate situations, too, especially in, like, a city. Yeah. And when I had to move so suddenly, the next place, which was the place on Aldine and Minnehaha, it was like, I didn't know any of those people either. Mm-hmm. So, because I was just like, I just want to live somewhere. And the guy was like, are you clean? Do you keep things clean? And I was just like, I can. But ultimately that guy moved out after like 3 months because I wasn't keeping my shit clean like he wanted me to. And the other roommate, who was the mannequin lady, was not even trying.
And this is a 6-bedroom?
No, it was a 3-bedroom.
3-bedroom.
Apartment up the back of the... So there's another, I think there were 3 units in there, and the downstairs one was the one the landlord lived in.
Okay.
I don't think he still lives there anymore, but everybody who does live there only speaks Portuguese, so I can't ask them.
Okay, well there you go.
But yeah, he was kind of weird. He would ask me to come in and have a drink with him every so often and tell me about like how he was a pig farmer at some point.
The landlord?
Yeah.
Okay.
And his hobby was stained glass, which is why if you look at that house, it's got a bunch of stained glass windows in it.
Where is this house again?
Corner of Minnehaha and Aldine.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just like right over there. And it was not a bad place. Like, this location was good, but when the other roommate left, the mannequin lady was not that interested in doing anything with regard to the apartment, and the guy who had been in charge before had been living there for like the last 6 years. So it sort of fell to me to find us a new roommate, and I didn't do a good job. He was like, not many people called. At least one of the people who called or who texted was like, you guys should send me your pictures so I can tell if you're ugly or not. And I'm like, well, you're not buying us, okay?
Yeah, like this is... Jeez.
And like, so when the guy came in and he was like, well, I'm a recovering alcoholic or whatever, I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, etc. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's fine. We'll keep an eye out and not, like leave. Like, I don't drink really because I can't, but sometimes we do have liquor around. So, but it turned out he was not just an alcoholic. He was quitting alcohol because when he was drunk, he used heroin. And it was not great. Like, all of his friends were from rehab and AA and stuff, so they were all addicts or recovering addicts or, recovering addicts to a greater or lesser degree. And one time, some of them tried to steal my van, because I borrowed my mom's van to drive to work, because that was after I got the job at the call center. And I'd been home just hanging out, and my roommate's friends had been around, and I got up and went somewhere, and I noticed that the door was open, and I was annoyed because I had a cat, and then I started looking around for him, and I could not find him, and I was like, oh, if you guys lost my cat, I'm going to murder you. And so I'm looking around, and I'm like yelling his name. Because the thing about Superman is that when he would get out, a lot of times he would just go hide somewhere and then fall asleep. And, I mean, that's what a lot of cats do when they get out. Yeah. It's stressful. And so I was about to go to the van and start driving around the neighborhood, which is a dumb thing to do. You probably shouldn't do it if you have a missing cat, but I was like, I'm at the end of my rope. But then I saw the light sensor turn on, and that light sensor was really, really, sensitive. So you could stop moving for 5 seconds, and it would turn off, and then you move again, and it would turn back on or whatever. And so I ran back, and he was in front of the door, and I was like, oh, thank God, and I put him in my place and whatever. And the next day, I woke up, and I went out to the car, and it was all fucked up. Because it turned out that when I had gone over the car to try to get into it to look for my cat, I had unlocked it, and I had forgotten to lock it again. And I don't know if this is just a junkie thing or an everybody who needs money that bad thing, but I assume they just tested the door as they left, and they found out that it was open, and they tried to jump it?
Hotwire.
Yeah, they tried to hotwire it. Except for, I assumed that whatever they were trying to hotwire it with was the cords for the fan, because the fan stopped working and it was the beginning of winter. Oof. So it really sucked. That blew. I mean, it didn't blow because they broke my fan. And then they stole my makeup. And I was just like, why would you do that?
Oh, God.
It's a stranger's makeup. But, if you can get rid of it for a little money and then do whatever you need to do, it's whatever. I don't have a lot of feelings of, anger against the people who have done property crimes against me because, well, my cat didn't die,
Yeah.
The car still ran, even though it was really cold inside.
And, yeah, I don't know.
it's frustrating because I was having a brief discussion with my sister about how I don't really care that much about property crimes in general. And my mom started yelling at me because my stepdad in the front seat was like white knuckling the steering wheel and getting really angry. I'm just like, I swear to God, I know what he was going to say too, and it would have been something like, well, of course you don't give a shit, you don't have anything. And it's like, yeah, I don't.
Yeah, so why should I?
So why should I give a shit?
Why are y'all expecting us to care?
You know, like,
like,
oh, boo-hoo. You know, like, it was it was not the same trips. I've had to take like 3 trips over the summer with my stepdad, even though we don't get along. Mm-hmm. Because my grandfather died, and we had to go to his funeral. And then there was a wedding we had to go to. And also he drove for my aunt's 90th birthday, which happened a few weeks before my grandpa died, who was her brother. He didn't get to go. But you know, we are diametrically opposed in a lot of ways, and I still had to talk to him quite a lot this summer, which is why I was like, Hannah, can I ride with you to the next wedding in Chicago? In the end, it was the right choice to make, so my mom got food poisoning and had to come in the day of, and, you know,
there you go.
I got to stay at the fancy hotel with my sister.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like the universe is kind of like pushing, like, yeah, it's like, you're trying to force yourself to be like, oh, I should put up with this person.
Yeah, but why am I doing that?
Yeah.
You know, like,
the universe
why?
is, like, telling you, like,
you know, I just have
yeah, it's fine.
to.
Like, don't.
I just have to. It doesn't mean that I have to be, like, chill about it, you know?
Yeah.
I just have to know this man. I don't have to be his best friend.
No. You don't have to, like, go out of your way to have an hour
yeah,
long
and
car
so
rides
it
with
sucks
them.
because, like, whenever I do something that's like, my friend has social anxiety, my best friend, and every time I do something and then tell her about it, she's just like, I don't know why you do that. Like, aren't you, like, scared? And I'm like, of what? This bald-headed man, half a head shorter than me, who's never been in a fight in his life? Okay. I mean, if you wanted me if you wanted to beat me in repairing a car, that's fine. But I'm the black belt in martial arts here. He's not going to fight me. Yeah. If he did, he would get his ass kicked, and he knows that. And I don't really want to kick his ass. He'd make my mom mad. So it's like, but that means that's the undercurrent, you know? Mm-hmm. He's mad at me not just because of, like, my opposition to his politics, but also because, like, even if he's right, he's not bigger than me. You know? Yeah. And it's like, that sucks for you. You will never be bigger than me, though. Yeah. It's like, you're done growing, man.
So you're a black belt, what?
I'm a black belt in Taekwondo, but I haven't really practiced since I was, like, literally 18.
Okay,
so.
Fair. I also did Taekwondo.
Oh, cool. How far'd you get?
I got to 2nd degree.
Nice. I was only 1st. My brother did get to 2nd degree, though. Yeah. Where did you go?
Northwest Martial Arts. It's sort of, started in, like, northwest Minnesota.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, the like, because when I was in Taekwondo, we were still watching The Three Ninjas during our sleepovers. So, like, the place I went to doesn't exist anymore, and it's all changed quite a lot. Because it was having a real moment when I was young, getting into karate, because our Taekwondo school called it karate.
Yeah, actually, I remember learning about that from my instructor, that a lot of Taekwondo schools called it karate because of the Karate Kid.
Yes,
so people
they did
actually,
call it the Karate Kid, yeah.
So people would actually go
and understand what it was, because if you put Taekwondo on there, they'd be like, what the fuck is that?
What's that? Yeah, I think he said there's a guy who tried to start a Taekwondo school and people thought it was like a Chinese restaurant or something.
Sounds about right. Yeah, I think I've heard that story as well.
Yeah.
But, like, I wish I could have done more, but it's expensive to be in a martial art.
Well, yeah, I remember once you start getting your black belt, you have to pay a fair amount of fees just to get, like, the certificate and stuff.
Yeah.
I think they have to, if it's, like, certified from Korea or ever.
Yeah, and I actually have one in my bedroom.
Nice.
Up on the wall.
Yeah.
My dad had his friend who does framing.
Oh yeah.
Frame it up really nice for me.
Oh, that's nice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He was the one who pushed us all to do martial arts and get our black belts because I think he thought it was really cool. But also, I didn't exactly have the most confidence of all time ever, and it did help with that.
Yeah, well, I'm curious because, you've talked about how, you were really interested in, anime and all these sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if, growing up at a time when it, wasn't as popular, and especially for, girls.
Yeah,
yeah.
There was definitely an element of, I have to find my people, or whatever. There were definitely people who thought it was weird, but I was past caring what anyone thought was weird at that point, so I was just like, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I was hyper-focused on it. It was kind of all I could think about for a good long time.
Yeah. So, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, at the time, I wasn't, and it's so funny because I literally remember being in school, and we had a kid come into school who was special needs and had autism, and his special interest was in sync. And they showed us, a video from, 2020 or whatever, where it explained what a special interest was and stuff. And I remember being like, huh, that's weird. Because, NSYNC isn't that cool. And neither are, vacuums or washing machines, which is what the other two kids were obsessed with.
Yeah. And
on the video they showed us, and I was like, so, anime actually rules, so I probably don't have autism.
That's funny.
And it's just like, that's an awfully flimsy...
You're like, oh, but anime is actually really super interesting, and who wouldn't want to just, totally...
It slaps. I understand why other people aren't interested in it, but it's objectively interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, funny. Well, that's definitely what either of, any of those kids would have said about NSYNC trains and washing machines, and I kind of agree with all of them now,
Yeah.
You can be really into something, and it's pretty chill.
Yeah.
And, I think most of the time the people who were around me were just sort of aware that I wasn't even paying that much attention to them. Because, I was always drawing in class or reading in class.
Yeah.
Eventually I switched from reading in class to drawing in class because teachers don't like it when you read in class. They hate it.
Yes, but drawing you can kind of
drawing
make it
you can get away with if you make it look like you're taking notes.
Exactly.
So I would have a notebook, and then I would have my little binder that had all of my printer paper on it I could draw on it.
Yeah, gotta fit it in somehow.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I basically drew nonstop for 2 straight years. And then when I got into college, I was like, the desks are smaller.
How am I supposed
to focus if I can't draw? And then it turned out I had ADHD as well. Don't bite. And you know what? Now I know. So, and knowing is half the battle.
Yeah. How? When were you able to figure that out, or finally be like, oh, this is what this is?
I got diagnosed with ADHD last year and started getting medicated, and it really has changed a lot in the sense that I can function and accomplish tasks. I haven't gotten a diagnosis for autism, and I'm not sure I will anymore because I tried to get one when I was the doctor who gave me my meds diagnosed me, but he was like, we want a full diagnosis or whatever and a workup. And they were like, yeah, we don't think you have autism because you're so empathetic and articulate. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I've heard that, there's some misconceptions.
There's definitely a lot of even the therapist who I'm seeing right now, who's chill, seems to be sort of nonplussed as to why I'm insisting on being autistic, and it's And he's like, well, you know, it sounds like you have a lot of behaviors that you've done to sort of make up for the things that you lack in this area or whatever. So, and I'm like, yes, but that doesn't mean that I don't have it. I mean, it doesn't really matter to me whether you think I have it or not, because it's not going to change that much, but, like, you should at least go, okay, this person feels some kind of way about this, you know what I mean? I don't know, it frustrates me because it's like, it reminds me of all that naysaying I'd done to myself. And it's like, no, I'm on board. That means that you guys have to be on board, too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know, too, that there's stuff about, like, women or like AFAB individuals,
yes,
people who are
quote unquote socialized different.
Yeah, socialized in a feminine way, are just encouraged to mask certain traits more.
Yes, my mom has actively encouraged me to mask stimming and echolalia. She hated that. Which is fine, because I understand, because I also hate it when other people are doing it around me.
Do you want to explain what that is?
Oh, it's when you repeat something that you hear.
Okay.
Or like, you repeat something over and over again.
Okay.
But it's mostly like, if someone says something on the TV, you say the same thing. You know, and I used to like to do that with, like, movies and stuff sometimes. And also, you know, I would use it to learn new words and phrases. I still do that sometimes when I'm, like, watching anime and they say something I don't know. I'll repeat it aloud so that I can remember it. I never remember it, but I don't consciously remember. I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, is that the...
Yeah, that's his little food alarm.
Yeah.
I have to go and make sure that the princess is all dealt with, because otherwise he'll come in and eat her food.
Yeah. Yeah, but I know, I mean, well, just with, like, TikTok and online discourse in general.
Yeah, it's been really, there's just, like, when I started looking up stuff, there's just a lot of videos, and I'm like, I can't watch all these videos. I have to look at something other than my own navel today. You know, like... But it's frustrating because even with all these videos and all of these, like, sort of... explainers and people going through it and being like, well, you could be like this or you could be like that or whatever. It's made up. It's all made up, guys.
Yeah.
You know, there was this video I watched recently by a YouTuber I like a lot called Sarah Zed, and she did a video about, like, how TikTokers are going off on narcissists are like this, and if you see someone like this, they're a narcissist and don't, you know, emotionally invest or whatever. But they'll also say shit like, oh, well, a dark empath knows how to deal with a narcissist, and then it turns out some of them are down a different rabbit hole entirely, and they're like, oh, well, actually, when I say narcissist, what I mean is the people who are possessed by demons. And I'm just like, oh. Yeah. You know, it's like any thing online that's like a trend has to have that. I mean, it does, because of humanity and its vast differences and its, you know, rainbow of things that people think and do. Like, but there's always going to be people who are, like, being semi-reasonable. You know, I'm sure that there's at least a few actual psychological professionals out there being like, hey, if you know someone who's a narcissist, here's some things you could do to protect yourself or whatever. But 9 times out of 10, they're like, narcissists have black eyes, and I'm a life coach. And it's just like...
Yeah. Well,
it's basically just like, well, this is what monsters look like. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, no.
Well, and it's like... Because, yeah, I watch Mickey Atkins. I don't know if you know her. She's a therapist. And she talks about, like, how people will call someone a narcissist for a certain behavior when it's like, narcissism is like a personality disorder. And, like, there's other terms you can use for their behavior. You can say they're being selfish,
yes,
they're being greedy, they're being like, you don't need to call them a narcissist.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's like, there's a difference between like being someone who did something that pissed me off just now and being a narcissist.
Yeah, like, big
and
difference.
Sometimes those two are going to be the same, but sometimes they're not, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, most of the time they're not, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of people who don't have any personality disorder piss me off sometimes. So, like,
actually, those guys piss me off more than the people who do have them.
Yeah.
It's like, the people who do have them are thinking about it half the time. You know, like, that's the other thing. The thing that she called out in the video was that they said a narcissist is anyone who... Or no, if you're worried that you're a narcissist, you can't possibly be a narcissist, because narcissists don't worry about that kind of thing. And it's like, no, I feel like they do.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend or I knew somebody online, basically, who was like, you know, I have an empathy disorder, and so, like, it really upsets me when people talk about people who are, like, cold-hearted or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or, like, you know, because it's not like I don't want to feel that empathy. It's not like I'm sitting here just luxuriating in, you know, not having an emotional reaction after you say something emotional. It's just that I don't have the same reaction that other people do, you know? Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is, it sucks, because it's like, the way that they talk about people with autism, and I said this in the interview when they were talking to me about how they didn't think I had autism, and I was like, look, I think that the reason that there's a diagnosis of autistic people as people who don't have as much empathy is not because they don't have as much empathy. It's because the empathy that they have was causing them so many problems that they essentially had to dial it down and not listen to how other people feel. You know, and sometimes they're making a great personal effort to not listen to how other people feel, because you kind of are just hearing it no matter what. You know, you have, for like various reasons, sort of learned how to read people's expressions, or you've learned how to read people's moods, you know, and like, that doesn't mean that you want to engage with them, but it's something that neurotypical people have to do. And so, you know, like, if you're someone who's like, well, I'm autistic, and that means that I'm allowed to be like this, then you end up with people who are legitimately in a place where they can't deal with being empathetic to other people, but you also have people who just decide not to because they don't have to.
Yeah. And
it's like, well, that's not the solution that we wanted here, and you know, like, you're not... I think a lot of people, neurotypical and not neurotypical, have not yet sort of actually wrapped their minds around the fact that you can't just get to a perfect state and then stop.
Yeah.
They think that you can become so much better and better and better all the time that you won't have to try anymore, and that's not true. You actually have to try the whole time.
Yeah.
You have to keep trying and fuck up a bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can get tough. But,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it does get tough. I mean, I definitely feel like I've been knocked back by getting diagnosed with ADHD and getting fired, and, you know, dealing with the fact that I definitely have autism, even if I'm not going to get diagnosed with it. And, like, you know, like, they'll be like, oh, but your eye contact is so natural. It's like, yes, I know. I've practiced it for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
You know?
I've seen some, like, memes or comments of people, like, quoting someone being like, oh, your eye contact is so natural. Me just staring at the bridge of their nose.
Yeah. I mean, I never really liked that, because I am more interested in what looking at you in the eye will give to me, as far as, like, your mood, or whether you're interested in looking at me in the eye. And so it's the kind of same thing that I think neurotypical people are dealing with when they're looking at other people in the eyes, but they're not thinking about it. They're just
not
doing
as
it.
Consciously.
Yeah, and so, like, I basically was like, you can't tell me that, like, I'm not autistic when, yes, I'm good at eye contact, but I remember teaching myself. And I remember counting in my head.
Yeah.
And it's like...
Well, it's like... Yeah, they say that's the issue with adult diagnosis is like... Yeah, people are like, oh no, but you can make eye contact. Mm-hmm. But it's like, yeah...
If they got me as a kid, they could have found at least one or two places where I was just...
Yeah.
You know, obviously needing a diagnosis and obviously needing help. But that's what I said to my mom when she said to me that I probably had autism right in the front of Big Bang Theory. Which is that, like, the kind of things that I would need are not things that I need a diagnosis for. You know, like, I just need someone to help me figure out how to get my stuff organized. I just need someone to help me figure out how to get all of my taxes done and figure out what's going on with my debts and all this other shit. And, like, those aren't things that are specifically limited to people who have autism.
Yeah.
So, if getting a diagnosis wouldn't help me at all and would instead just be like, well, now you can't emigrate to a bunch of countries, then I won't do it. I was thinking about doing it because, like I said, my dad died, and that means I might get some Social Security money, but that doesn't really look like an option for me right now. And even if it was, I'm sure ADHD is part of that too. So I could try to get Social Security money for being a real Gen Z attention lord.
Whatever the kids are saying now.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's true that people in a younger generation do have less of a attention span, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't really bad before, basically. You know, like, ever since TV, it's been a problem. And it has to do with the idea of, like, fast everything. Mm-hmm. And so you change. Yeah.
I remember reading some, like, Calvin and Hobbes comic where his dad is complaining that, like, you know, people used to expect, you know, a memo or something to take like a week, and now they expect it in a few days. And this is just like in the 90s. He's like, now with car phones and stuff, and it's
God.
like, oh, you don't even know it's coming.
You know, and I'm sure that's why I think a lot of Calvin's dad was the guy who made the strip, whose name I can't remember.
Bill Watterson.
Yes, Watterson's like expressing his own opinions about capitalism, but I think that him quitting and becoming like a retired painter is an even bigger expression of his opinions about capitalism, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you can't have my brain baby and take it and turn it into, you know, a merchandised 6-film deal.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. I love those comics a lot.
Me too. I'm, you know, like, I feel like a good animation team could make something really amazing out of it, but I also don't think that exists in the framework that we have. You know,
it
like,
gets so commercialized.
Yeah, especially because it's so popular. Yeah. And, you know, there would be Calvins and Hobbeses and plushes everywhere and all this other jam.
Yeah, no.
But it is really interesting to have at least one example of someone who could have made insane money hand over fist if he had gone that direction, deciding not to. Because, like, that's an option. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah. Well,
just being a guy who's comfortable and not being the richest, you know, not being Jim Davis too is a thing.
I mean, people really do act a lot of times like, my hands were tied because I was offered a bunch of money.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
it's so fucking wild because they're like talking about like there's this YouTuber and I don't even know his shit, but he's just like a Minecraft YouTuber. Mm-hmm. And he made a comment because he saw that these streamers and YouTubers were coming together to make like a Lunchables knockoff. Mm-hmm. And he was just like, you know, like, that sucks, basically. What he said was like, it sucks that YouTube is like this now because you guys aren't attempting to do anything useful for these kids by feeding them this crap. Mm-hmm. You know, like, you're just tricking them out of their money, basically.
Yeah, and also I've seen some discourse about it. It's not even like it's literally just like the exact same as Lunchables.
It's exactly the same as
with
Lunchables.
less calories.
So
which like kids need calories.
And also they only put potassium in their drink, so they're like it's less salt because. And I'm just like, okay, man.
Yeah, no, it's.
And it's all like, oh well, it's basically the same thing that Lunchables was trying to do, which was get, the kids who were eating a school lunch to have something commercial in it. So like it's got a little Reese's in it. It's got a little Crunch Bar. It's got a Capri Sun, And now you're like, oh, that Capri Sun was really good. I'm going to have my mom buy Capri Suns or whatever. And it's like, it's that same thing. So it's like kids who like Mr. Beast or whatever are going to be like, oh, I could get a Mr. Beast Feastable in there. And then now Logan Paul has them on his prime journey. And it's just, I mean, he was right. He was 100% right. But what's even righter is that he just said that and then he just noped. Even though, like, these guys who have incredibly huge audiences, like KSI, who's, like, one of the biggest streamers on Twitch, and Logan Paul, who's, like, everybody knows that dumbass's name, like, they were going off on this random Minecraft YouTube guy, and he just wasn't commenting back at all.
Yeah.
And it's just like, actually... And one of them, KSI was like, oh, is this you, man? Because he shows pictures of, like, the merch that this guy had, like, his Minecraft tie-in merch and his little U2's figure. Yeah. And then someone was like, but KSI, you have a U2's too. And he's like, that's not what I'm talking about. And it's just like, he was just trying to own him on something, and it's like, not everybody's like you. Mm-hmm. Not everybody who sees someone coming at them with a fistful of money goes, I'll do this no matter what it is. Some of them go, I hope this isn't some crypto bullshit,
Yeah.
Like, and so, like, it's good to see that still exists. It makes me feel hopeful because, like, if I ever became a public figure, I would be pulling a Chapel Roan right now, too. I would be like, you don't get to tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. You don't get to tell me who I'm supposed to, like... push, like, I'm not going to put my weight behind this person because I don't agree with what she's going to do, but I am going to vote for her, so what does that say? It's like, there's just so much pressure on public figures to be this kind of idealized image of what people have of them, and it's like, just let them live their lives, like, I'm sure that Brad Pitt is a weirdo, like, because that dude hasn't had any contact with, like, the real world for the last 40 years. And also, he, like, did a bunch of weird shit in an airplane and beat his kids. But most celebrities are just people who, some of them suck and some of them don't. Like, when everyone was like, oh, I can't believe Ellen is mean. I'm like, that's because you didn't know anything about her before she started doing her TV talk show.
Yeah.
She was never famous for being nice.
No.
She was kind of famous for being passive-aggressive.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's so funny because, she wasn't nice. She was passive-aggressive. And in the end, it turned out to take down her whole, like, quote-unquote media empire. But really, the only problem was that she's just some guy. Mm-hmm. The real problem is just that she's just a shitty person who got, like, she's not a great person, but she's not, like, Mussolini. She just... treated the lowest ranked people in her business shittily, just like every other boss ever.
Yeah, it's like people are so surprised, like, the boss was shitty, and it's like, you're surprised by that?
Have you never had a boss? Like, didn't you remember that absolute power corrupts absolutely?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, it's, I think, really ridiculous that you're allowed to, like, assume foibles of, like, the neighbors that you see in public, but if the second, like, a political figure or, like, a celebrity does something, not even, like, offensive, but just, like, weird, suddenly, everybody's talking about this, all they'll ever talk about. And it's, like, it's one of those things where it's just so stupid, because I grew up in the era of Us magazine, where it's like, oh, they're just like us, they go shopping too, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
But then now I'm in this media landscape that's basically just like they're nothing like us. There's something wrong with them. And it's like, I don't think that's true either. I mean, there is something wrong with most of them, and it's that they're rich, but
yeah.
Like the richer someone gets, the weirder they get, the more divorced from like actual normal people, which is why Dave Chappelle isn't funny anymore.
Yeah.
Like, he's suddenly like going to municipal building meetings in California and being like, if you put any low income housing anywhere near me, I'm going to kill all of you. And it's just like, okay. But my property values, and I'm like, but my personal value as a human being. I mean, it's just it's a racket, is what it is. Mm-hmm. It's basically like, I just find it very funny that 50 years ago he wouldn't have been able to buy property there either. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I mean, maybe not California. I don't know all of the sundown towns in the whole country, but it's like, how is this any different than when you couldn't find a place to live? Mm-hmm. But maybe he never couldn't find a place to live. I don't know much about his childhood. It's always very funny that I have a friend who runs a publishing company, mm-hmm. and she's black, so a lot of the people, it sort of reveals a lot of the racism inherent in the system, because like she'll just be like, yeah, this guy said this thing to me, and someone will be like, what the fuck? I'm white, he's never said that to me. And one of the things was there was a guy, and obviously this guy, nobody likes him because he's just shitty. Mm-hmm. But he went up to Kel, who's one of the people who now works at Iron Circus, and was like, you don't want to spend too much time with Spike. She's, what did he say? He said, something like, she's not on our like level, essentially, despite the fact that like she grew up in the same neighborhood as like a bunch of famous actors and sports people, because she lived in like the rich part of Maryland, because her dad was like a surgeon or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, she went to a fancy school, and she went to another fancy school, and then she was like, this sucks, and she dropped out. And now she runs a publishing company. She's more bougie than you are. And it's just like, well, because she's black, they assume she's not, even though, like...
Yeah.
It's funny because if they knew about that, they might be like, oh, well, that's the only reason she has success is because her family's got money. And no. They cut her off because she married a white boy.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, she cut them off because she married a white boy and they acted weird about it.
Okay.
It wasn't like that hardline racism so much as it was just like, yeah, but I don't know about this. Oh, you don't? Okay, click.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, good thing you don't have anything to do with what I do with my life ever again. And I'm like, oh, okay, good for you. Yeah. That shit's tough. Luckily, her husband's family is pretty chill and cool. That's good. But anyway. Yeah, that probably should be off the record.
Yeah, but, well, so I'm curious, after talking about all this, of just sort of, like, how you got the beliefs that you have today, and, also what, like, renting has kind of taught you about that.
Yeah, I mean... I feel like it's so sad that people don't even get a chance to put down roots, Like, that's the other thing, is like, things change in a neighborhood because more people stay there longer. And I think more people are staying here a little longer now that they have rent control, because you're less likely to wake up and have a $400 rent hike. And I think that means a lot. And just having people... you can't really build a community if, like, nobody can live in the community for very long. Like, and what's wild is, like, I lived here for my college years, and then about 3 more years after that, and then I moved away, and then I moved back for like a year, and then I had to move away again, and now I've been here for like 3 years. So I'm coming up on like the longest I've ever lived in one place on my own, or at least the longest I've ever lived in one place that wasn't my parents' house, you know? And like, I couldn't get that before rent control. Like, I would have to move every year because it just wouldn't be tenable, because they would just raise the rent by like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah. Do you remember your highest rent increase?
Most of the time it was like $100 or $150.
That was like standard.
Yeah, usually every year. And like, most of the time we were just like, I don't want to pay that, I'm going to move to someplace else where they'll give me a better deal. And it's like, that's reasonable, but also, is that what we want in this world, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like $100 rent increase, that's, you know, $1,200 more dollars a year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the charts of like wages and everything. It's just
yeah,
crazy.
I try not to look too hard at them because it hurts my feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say, like, the effect of having to move around and like not really have those roots? How would you say that's affected you?
It really made my 20s feel very fragmented in a lot of ways. I mean, because I have ADHD, I form my memories in a space, you know? I mean, I assume that's part of it could be part of the autism too, who fucking knows. But like, having, you know, it's kind of nice because I can look back in my memories and be like, oh, this happened during this specific, like, 1 year because I'm in this room. But also, like, I want to have a chance to have a place where I feel comfortable, and that, and you know, like when I would move into a place, I would be like, okay, I have to put up stuff on the wall, like I have to put up posters and stuff, because if I didn't, I would feel less good in the space. I wouldn't like it as much, and if I waited even like a minute, I would be like, yeah, well, I'll just have to move next year, and I won't. So why bother?
Yeah.
And it's like, so having the ability to be like, okay, well, this is how I want my house to be right now, but, you know, maybe next year I'll move stuff around, or maybe this year I'll, you know, sort and create, like, a different space for this kind of work or that kind of work.
Versus, I'm going to be packing it all up.
I have to pack it all up in less than a year, so it doesn't even, you know, who cares what I do? Yeah. And just, you feel a lot more... I think it's like being secure in your space, you know, when you have been there for a long enough time. And me, since I have cats, they also need a lot of time to get secure in their space, and having to move every year probably was very disruptive and upsetting for them.
Yeah, I know cats, I mean, like, they really like having their scent all over things.
Yep, and they gotta have their specific spaces, and their, like... And having that all completely change suddenly is probably pretty upsetting.
Yeah. Especially if you know, there's no way you can warn them, really.
Yeah, you can't really explain. I mean, they know, they eventually figure it out. Like, like one of my cats are like, when I'm going on vacation, they'll see me take the suitcase out and they'll just be like,
fuck. No.
But, you know, like, that doesn't mean that they're excited about it or that they like it. Oh, I didn't sleep very much last night.
Yeah, no, well,
we ended up talking for a long time.
Yeah, no, we have been. I think coming to a close soon.
Yeah, your coach will turn into a pumpkin at 6:30.
Yes, gotta get home before then. But yeah, well, I'm just curious. So, like, I mean, you said now. Because of, like, rent control, you can stay here more. Have you noticed, like, do you feel more connected to the community because you've been able to stay here longer? Or?
I'm more confident about doing things out in the community. Like, I'm more likely to, like, actually put out, you know, the effort to do the things because I'm not going to have to just leave. You know what I mean? And like, when I get involved in my community, I'm seeing more people I know that I like. So that's always nice.
Yeah. No. Well, I really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, anything else you want to say, but I like to always sort of close out with just asking people, is there any advice or just knowledge, wisdom that you would like to impart on people?
I don't know if I have any wisdom. I guess, like, don't just get random roommates off Craigslist. Love yourself more than that. Didn't exactly go that great for me, and I mean, it didn't go that bad either. I don't really have any, like, negative feelings about my previous roommates. Even the ones who are, like, junkies. Because, like, I don't know. That guy eventually did, like, come and apologize to me. And I was like, I understand that you're, because he was in the AA thing. And like, I'm fine with that, but I did not really accept his apology because someone, or him, probably him, stole the watch that was my dad's last Christmas present to me.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, if you could get it back to me, then it would be different, but I don't think you can, or could,
Yeah.
So, I bought a replacement, but I don't wear it anymore.
Yeah. But, yeah, okay, no Craigslist roommates.
Yeah, don't
avoid it if you can.
treasure yourself and don't get Craigslist roommates. I also lost my Xbox
Oof.
and a bunch of games and my brother's Wii
Oh, wow.
and his ex. Or no, I didn't lose that. I thought I lost his ex-fiance's copy of Wind Waker, but I'm pretty sure I still have the disc. I just don't know where it is.
Somewhere around here.
I might have given it back to him, actually, which would probably be the best thing to do, honestly.
Yeah.
He
No.
was the one who got cheated on.
Oof, that's rough.
At least they're married, I want to say, like.
Okay.
But
No.
I can't imagine it makes him feel that much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say before closing out?
I think that everybody should be allowed to make their house feel like home to them. And that also includes, like, kids and pets, but that's my most radical take that I'll give you.
Okay.
I think you should allow your kids some freedom to decide how their room is and what goes in their room. And I think you should give your pets some space in the house as well.
Yeah.
And also your husbands. Give your husbands place in their house. Damn.
That's why the man cave is so
I know, but if you're allowed to put, like, ugly reclaimed wood that says live, laugh, love all over your house, then your husband should at least be able to put up his, like, Captain America shield or something.
Yeah, no. I feel that. But anyway, well, thank you so much, Abby.
It's like, woman, your taste is bad, too.
Yeah, it's just on a different spectrum. Great. Cool. I am going to stop.
Sounds good.